Hello and welcome to ZHTV, where we are breaking down some trade targets for the Brisbane Lions. 5 trade targets written up by Mr. Mitch Keating himself, our AFL chief editor. How are you, mate?
Hey, mate. Good.
Good.
You?
That's good. All right. So Brisbane, what do they need? They have had a pretty disappointing start to the season. We're recording this in, around the mid-season time, 14th of June. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do they need?
It's a weird one because you look at their list and on paper, pretty bloody good. But performance, and they've got a lot of time to turn it around, is well below expectations, given they made the grand final last year and were a kick off winning it. So
it hasn't really been a list thing.
No, it hasn't.
Much,
it's going to be interesting to watch for them across the second half of the year if they can really turn back in favour, or if this is what we're supposed to be expecting from Brisbane for the rest of the year. So bit of a mix from what we've got listed, some outside run, maybe some ruck help, one kind of left field big move that if they can kind of find the space for, and then another maybe key defensive help. I know they get Tom Doedee back next year after his long layoff, but they won't have Darcy Gardner for at least the first half of the year, and him aging. Obviously, they've got Jack Payne and Harris Andrews down there, but maybe some more key defensive help that might not be a certain starter, but can press among depth and really put pressure on the senior key defenders under Chris Fagan. So there's a few options that we've got listed, and all kind of offer something a bit different. And then our last option is a bit more of a draft and trade focus for the Lions, just given what they might need to be doing at the end of the year.
Yep. Okay, cool. So let's kick it off with the first one. So always, if you are interstate team, you want to lure some people that were, from that area. So Bailey Scott.
Yeah, a bit of a different one, just given he grew up in Queensland, was part of Gold Coast's academy, and out of Broadbeach as well. Just given his time up there, he could have picked the Suns, North or Geelong, just given his father-son ties as well. Certainly accustomed to up in the Sunshine Coast, and just given the role he's probably been switched to a little bit this year at the Roos. He's fantastic last year and one of the most improved players I thought in the competition. But this year, when they've kind of needed to shift and prioritise guys like McKercher, Fisher, Sheasel, he probably hasn't been able to have the same impact. And I just like to think if he could have that season he had last year for a club like Brisbane, he'd really, really do pretty tremendous difference, I think, for the Lions. Bit of run off half-back, bit of work on the wing. They've got some similar options. They lose Kitty Coleman this year, so we've probably lacked that. And I think that's shown how important of a player he has been for them over the last couple of seasons. And then they've got Connor McKenna and Darcy Wilmot. And some of these guys certainly can push a bit higher up in the field, much like Scott could. But I think he'd be certainly a good fit for them with some outside run or some defensive run as well. So one to consider, off contract, and certainly might be one of those Kangaroos players who are considering their future and whether they want to be playing finals a lot more or if they want to be sticking at Arden Street and playing that long game. So that's certainly one that Brisbane could consider. I don't think you'd come too much cost-wise. Not a free agent, though, so they would have to trade for him. But, a bit of an interesting one. Like I said, they would always be looking at Queensland-linked talent, and he's one of the very few that aren't on the Suns or Lions list.
Yep. Interesting. Another Queensland product in Samson Ryan.
Yeah, former Brisbane Lions Academy player as well. So one who would be going a bit full circle there. Unsigned for next season at Richmond. Has kind of come in and out of Adam Uze's side, just given how they've been trying to work their key position players and namely their key forwards. So like Jacob Kajitsky, Noah Bolter, some of these guys are really trying to, they really want them performing quite well as key forwards, as they do with Ryan. But then when you talk about his ruck ability as well, they probably haven't quite switched to that 2-ruck system all too much. Sam Naismith out injured for the rest of the year is going to see him get a few more looks. And he had some pretty good VFL form as well as more of a forward. So he could be really fitting for them as a ruck forward hybrid. They've got Darcy Ford as that second string option behind Oscar McInerney, Kalen Lane, Henry Smith waiting in the wings yet to get a look. So if they're not really liking what they're seeing from those guys, then Samson Ryan certainly could be an option for them as a depth forward or backup ruck option. And he's probably a bit more of a formidable attacking player than what Ford is. And Darcy Ford certainly gets a look every now and then, even with the likes of Danaher, Hipwood, and McInerney in the side. They've got Brandon Ryan, so that's probably one name that might stump up a move like this. Plus, the Tigers would certainly want to keep Samson Ryan beyond this year. So there'll be one to consider for Brisbane. Would be a nice little fit. Like I said, he'd be back in Brisbane colours after serving in their academy as a junior.
Yep. And another guy that I think everybody's going to be putting up their hands for because he is an unrestricted free agent in 2024. So Tyson Stengle.
Yeah. Geez, having him and Charlie Cameron in the same forward line would be nice. The big, I guess, impasse here for the Lions is knowing how much wiggle room they would have in their salary cap because, like you said, Stengle's going to be one of the most in-demand players, or it sounds like he's going to be the most in-demand player after guys like Will Hayward and Hugh McCluggage re-signed. So a lot of clubs in Victoria, but why wouldn't Brisbane, put their hat in the ring? Like I said, he's not going to cost anything as an unrestricted free agent, so that's a big plus in for them not having to get rid of any draft capital, and we'll touch on why that's such a big deal for them this year a little bit later on. But him and Charlie Cameron, same forward line. Stengle's only 25. I think Cameron will be in his 30s in the next year or two. So just kind of nice little, not succession because they're both all Australian small forwards, but they kind of get a bit more out of a small forward, exciting small forward than just what they've got left with Charlie Cameron. So nice, would be a nice little addition having him, Kyle Lohman and Charlie Cameron roaming at the feet of their talls. But like I said, Ed, this is that outside left field, small chance option, but make a big play for someone like Tyson Stengle if you've got the room for sure.
Yep. Yeah, that'll be pretty scary with them too. And I think Cameron's still got a fair amount left in him. So
he does. The other thing is that supposedly clubs are seeing where he's at in his future. So if there's a move, if he decides to depart, even while being contracted this year, then Stengle's a perfect replacement. Doesn't sound like he will leave, but could be a good option for them.
All right. So next one on the list is Denver Grainger-Barras.
Yeah, as mentioned earlier, if they just want some key defensive depth, certainly a player who still has some upside, just injuries and maybe some level of form since being picked up with pick 6 4 years ago. Hasn't been the easiest run for him, but if he can get even close to the expectations he had as a teenager, then he'd be a bargain pickup for anyone. I think the Hawks would still want to keep him, but without a contract this year, and certainly would be wanting to play senior football in the as soon as he can, after being on the fringes a lot. So does he just look for a new environment somewhere like Brisbane, who obviously do pretty well with injury-struck players, and then at the same time he'd be letting off guys like Harris Andrew and Jack Payne, and then eventually pressing for their spots at selection. So could fit in nicely alongside those guys in the back line. Obviously, as we mentioned earlier as well, Tom Duday's set to come back, so they'd have a nice little crop of tall defenders, and hopefully could get the most out of someone like Grainger-Barras.
Yeah, absolutely. So last one, as you mentioned, a bit of a different idea, and as everybody knows, there's another Ashcroft waiting in the wings, looking to come in, who they will probably pick up as a father-son. So some later draft picks is what you think they should be chasing.
Yeah, well, Ashcroft at the moment, such a consistent midfielder for Sandy Dragons, and he started his under-18s championships really strongly for Vic Metro. His brother probably the best in his draft class, and only went at pick 2 because the Giants really wanted to have Aaron Cadman as that pick 1 selection. And then I think it could be very similar for Levi, with probably the best player in his draft, probably could earn a bit at pick 1.
Is he higher rated than what Will was?
Very similar.
Yeah.
I think from what I saw, I'd probably have Will ahead of him, but geez, you'd be happy with both, and Brisbane are going to be absolutely rapt that they've got those two on their list for the next decade.
It's like Scott brothers again.
Huh?
It's like the Scott brothers.
Yeah, a lot better as well. So it's going to be so exciting when they get him, but that is the big question, is how they get him. They had to get in a lot of picks and a lot of draft points to match a bid for Will, and they'll have to do the exact same for Levi. Obviously, it's going to be interesting now with how they're struggling. I think they currently hold pick 6, just with where the ladder sits. So they'd be trading that out and getting a lot of later picks in. You split that pick 6 for maybe 2 in the teens for a club that really wants to move up, and then you split those 2 that are in the teens for in the 20s, and that's our way to get more draft points from the one pick. And then there'll be plenty of suitors that want to get in that top 10 range. Richmond being one of them. They've got heaps of picks. I think they've got the most points of any club, and they've got about 8 or 9 selections for this year's draft after stockpiling a few future picks last year. And then on top of Levi as well, they've got Sam Marshall, who one of the best players for the Allies this year, a member of the Lions Academy, and certainly could be a first-round draft pick as well. So once they get the bid done for Levi, which again could very well be pick 1 and costing them a lot of points, they'll have to then turn their attention to Sam Marshall. So getting later draft picks, while yes, it's not like the biggest trade target on the list, it's certainly going to be a priority for them just to make sure that they can get Ashcroft settled. They will. It usually works out in that case. But yeah, they're going to have to. Picks are going to be a large focus of their off-season planning once the season's done.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's 5 trade targets for the Brisbane Lions. Again, some interesting names there. It's going to be very interesting to see where they finish this year and then what type of draft hand they end up with at the end of the year. What do you think is the most likely scenario out of those?
Yeah, well, the Ashcroft one is, like I said, it'll be a priority for them to be getting later picks in. Yeah. Richmond are going to be a perfect suitor. There might be a couple others that want to move up, as there are going to be a few clubs that want to move out as well. Gold Coast are another one that will have early access. Carlton have a couple of father-son, the Camper Rally boys. So there's going to be a lot of clubs, and Brisbane will potentially have the best pick to hand over from those sides. Samson Ryan would be a good one. Stengle and Grainger-Barras probably lesser options. Scott could be a nice one if he's looking to move and potentially back to Queensland. But I think that Samson Ryan would be the most likely. But Brisbane have been pretty quiet on the, trade news front so far this year.
Yep, absolutely. All right, thanks for your work, Mitch.
Thanks, Phoenix.
And we will be breaking down every team in the AFL, 5 trade targets for each one. Obviously, next up is Carlton. We're going alphabetical order, so stay tuned for that. And catch all the latest AFL news at zerohanger.com.